Hi, I'm Dr. Asghar Husain, orthopedic surgeon. We're starting a series called Inside the Injury. In this series, I'm going to look at injuries that happen in athletics. We're going to double click on them and we're going to figure out if we can learn something from these injuries that might apply to athletes and to non-athletes. So today's episode, we're going to be looking at Juju Watkins. Juju Watkins is a USC basketball player and they were in round 2 of the NCAA basketball tournament. She was going in a fast break, and her knee twisted, and it was later reported she had an ACL tear. So before I go any further, let's watch the injury. So the injury's at the right knee. So if you watch, she's making a fast break across the court, and you see the foot land, the right knee goes in, the trunk comes forward, and then she lands. You can see it from a different angle. She's running up the court as fast as she can. The foot lands, the right knee twists, the trunk comes forward, and she lands on the ground.
So why did the right knee twist?
So that's what we're going to talk about. This is what's called a non-contact injury. And the reason that it's relevant is if you notice, the two players around her technically didn't push her, didn't shove her. So this happened based on how she was running. Because if you notice, she's running full speed and she hits the ground. So to really understand at least what I think happened, my disclaimer is that I'm not Juju Watkins' physician. I'm looking at the video and I'm trying to figure out what may have happened and where you go from here. So here is my sense of what happened here. As she was running, the foot landed on the ground, and as the knee dropped, there was so much force on the ACL that the ACL, which is a ligament inside the knee, tore. Now the question is, why would that happen? You have a very, very well-trained basketball player. Why would she have an ACL tear? One of my concerns, and one of the reasons I made this video, is there was someone that would look at this and talk to their friend or their family and say, see, you shouldn't play basketball because you might get hurt. And believe it or not, in my world, I often hear healthcare providers give recommendations to patients, and the recommendation is stop doing the thing. I have a very strong bias. People should live active lives. And so my answer would be, if you want to do something, if you love doing something, well, you have to train for it.
I stopped playing basketball.
So let's go back to this.
I was just too short.
What can we learn from this injury? Juju Watkins had, and it hasn't been fully confirmed, but it looks like she had a non-contact ACL injury. So much of what I'm going to say now, I'm referencing Tim Hewitt. I met Tim Hewitt during my sports medicine training, and Tim Hewitt is world-renowned as a researcher. He's a PhD, and he's written a lot about what makes ACL injuries happen and what can we do to reduce the risk. It's also worth mentioning the word risk reduction versus prevention. Right? You can't prevent ACL injuries, but what we know from a lot of research that's out there is you can lower the risk. Does that make sense so far?
Makes sense.
Okay, so what was found was 4 risk factors, and I'm going to go over them, and we're going to go back to the injury, and you're going to see there are a couple of things in there, and I'm not bringing these out to be critical of this player, I'm just bringing them out because all of us, whether we're athletes or non-athletes, can learn from that and take that perhaps into our lives from here.
Well, people want to make sure they don't get this kind of injury.
Exactly. So there are 4 risk factors. First of all, we know that females have about a 6 times higher risk of ACL injuries than males. And one of the things that was found, primarily by Tim Hewitt and his research groups, was a few risk factors. The first one is what's called ligament dominance. That means when you are engaging in an athletic endeavor, instead of having the muscles around the knee protecting you, you are relying on the ACL alone, that ligament in the middle of the knee, to protect you. Now, here's the problem with that. The ACL is very strong. It takes about 450 to 500 pounds to tear it, but you have someone who's racing across a basketball court at full speed. You're talking about 5 to 20 times your body weight landing on your foot. Now, if you do the math, that is way more than 500 pounds. So the point of this is one of the protective mechanisms that we can develop are the muscles around the knee so that when you're landing, when you're pivoting, those muscles have to work to protect you. Many people call that the posterior chain. That's the glutes, the hamstrings, those muscles in the back of your leg, the big muscles that are there to really keep the knee stable. The second risk factor is quad dominance. And the same basic issues apply. you need the muscles in the back of the knee to protect the knee. And when those aren't there and you're firing the quad, which is in the front, way more than that, then you actually pull the knee forward because the quad attaches in the front of the tibia. And if you're really quad dominant, that means you're firing the quad more than the hamstring when you're landing, and you pull the tibia forward, which can increase the risk.
Well, are those the people that when they're running, they look like they're really leaning forward?
I don't think you can easily just look at somebody that way. There's a lot of fancy testing that can really determine this. But the beauty of what I'm saying is there are things you can do that are actionable to actually prevent these things. And interestingly enough, another reason that I'm putting this video out there is there are many times during my career I've went to high school coaches, I've went to college coaches, high school and below more than that, and I have found most of the coaches not interested. When I said, look, there are many pieces of evidence out there that can help your athletes lower the risk of injury, they would say, nah, we don't need to do that. But I still see an alarming number of boys and girls that are getting ACL tears, and I wonder, could we have lowered these risks? All right? The third risk factor is leg dominance. Many of us favor one or the other. Many athletes, except for the best of the best, they cannot symmetrically use both knees. That means one side has better control than the other. And that, again, is something that is trainable. But one side is a little bit more controlled than the other, then clearly, if those muscles aren't firing in a way that's protective, then you have now increased your risk. The fourth factor is trunk dominance, especially in younger athletes as they get bigger and stronger. If you haven't developed the muscles below the trunk, then what happens is you move the trunk a lot more. And again, when you're moving the trunk a lot more, you're putting more stress on the knee. So how does all of that relate to this injury that we saw? It boils down to this. When your foot is on the ground and you're moving, then you actually want the foot to absorb energy and you want to have your knee be in a stable position. And there are three elements of this injury that are concerning. The one, if you notice, the foot hits flat on the ground. As she's running, instead of the foot rolling, it stops flat on the ground, the knee caves in, and then the trunk actually falls forward.
I have a question. It's an observation. I'm looking at the footage too. So is it possible that the reason her foot falls flat and she stops suddenly is because she was trying to stop so she could pivot and throw the ball?
Exactly. It could very well be the case.
Right, so she was trying to do that and just didn't work out well.
This goes to show that can happen even in very, very good athletes when there's something that's just slightly off, when something's not perfect, perhaps someone is a little bit fatigued. Again, it's really hard to say. I don't want to be overly critical of this. I'm pointing this out so we can look at these risk factors and show those who have athletic goals, or even those who don't have athletic goals. Like, having muscle control is the key ingredient here. When you have muscle control, your risk goes down and you're better equipped to handle very challenging situations.
So like for the average guy who's just, shooting hoops on the weekends and stuff, so that sudden stop and you're trying to turn, stop, run fast, stop, turn, and throw the ball, that's where it can really happen.
Yes.
So that's where you got to be extra wary of form, right?
The same rules apply. So then the question then would be, well, where can we go from here? Well, you can train to improve this. So the question really is, how do you minimize the risk? And that is a much, much longer answer. But my simple answer is plyometrics, which is a fancy way of saying you're doing a lot of jumping. But you're doing jumping with feedback. That means as you're jumping, you're landing, and either a coach or somebody's watching you and helping you figure out, am I landing in a way that is loading my ACL the right way? Am I loading my knee the right way? Am I minimizing risk? So it's that feedback that makes a difference. And ultimately, as I always preach to my patients too, single leg control is where you start. You start and you learn single leg control by getting all the muscles to move properly. It's coordination, not strength. People say, oh, I need strength. Yes, you need strength, but what you need more than strength is you need coordination. You need those muscles to be coordinated in a way so when you're landing and you're pivoting to the left or pivoting to the right, you have trained those muscles as best as you can to be able to try to compress the knee and to load the knee in a way that you won't hurt the parts inside.
Like, what are some examples of things people should do? So
well,
jumping up and down,
this would be something I would consider covering in our future exercise segments, because I think it's worth double clicking on and going into further. It's not something I would want to, in a sentence or two, really be able to handle, because there's a lot to it. Because really, ultimately, part of it is it's not something you can really write on a page and hand to somebody.
So it's beyond the scope of this video.
That's right. We have so many healthcare providers, therapists, trainers, coaches that are aware of these, and there's some good ones. Go out there and find someone who can help train you in a way that will lower the risk of injury.
Right. So also, I know people who just, they don't do anything and all week, and they go out and shoot hoops on the weekend.
That's right, and again,
so that's I assume that's a risk factor too, because you're not.
Yes, it is, and a lot of times people think it's the sport that did it, and it's really this. When it's the lack of training, you're going into it and you don't have your protective mechanisms. That's the problem. So the question is, where's Juju going to go from here? Well, most likely, again, I don't have inside information on this, but most likely what happens is we start her off on a rehab program after she's had appropriate testing, and generally someone like her would consider surgery to really reconstruct the ACL so that she can recover and go through all the steps necessary for her to be able to play, which probably amounts to more than 6 months and sometimes up to about a year. So ultimately, the goal of this video is to give you a seed so that if you're an athlete or you're thinking about it or you know someone who's an athlete, you might say, hey, have fun with your sport, love your sport, but at least train for it, and train for it in a way that will help you prevent injury, not so that you have anxiety when you're playing, but so that you have prepared your body so it can handle the rigors of what your sport will require.
Also, on this level too, especially, freak things happen. So you can train, and then just one wrong step and just the freak thing happens and that's it, right?
Exactly, and that's why I'm pointing out this injury is because it's a non-contact injury. It's not a contact injury. Because the contact injuries, they're going to happen. If somebody takes you out, you can do all the training in the world and you won't be able to avoid that too. And even with perfect training too, you may not prevent a non-contact injury. I don't think ACL tears can be prevented, but you can significantly lower your risk. There have been studies done that when you put a team through an ACL prevention program, especially females, you will lower your incidence of ACL tears by 1/2 to 2/3. If you think about that number, that's an alarming amount of improvement. So the question you have to ask is, why is everybody not having their team go through an ACL prevention program? So that's my challenge to you out there, coaches, trainers, therapists, everybody. If you are affiliated with a team, make sure, if you're not doing it already, yes, we're in an age where everyone knows this. What I'm not saying is something new. But if you're not doing these things, then please start doing them, because you can significantly alter the course of your life. In theory, it's always really heartbreaking sometimes to see an athlete who has their sights set on something and all of a sudden an ACL just tears that up, and now they have 6 months to a year that they have to now deal with. So the more you can think about these things proactively, the better.
Okay, so you mentioned a possible ACL reconstruction surgery, right? So one of the things for everyone to look forward to is I think we are doing a video coming up on an ACL reconstruction surgery, right?
That's right. We have a lot of questions on these too. So not only are we talking about why ACL tears happen, I've shown you an ACL tear happening and why it may have happened. We're going to also show you how to execute it.
Okay, well stay tuned for that video. Make sure you subscribe.
Thank you for watching.
See ya.